The Midnight Wisps had just come off an impressive rookie season in 2017. They managed to podium 3 times, with one of those podiums being a gold. Their clutch performance at the end of the year brought them to their end position, 4th. It was great, and they were looking to build off of that year, but things weren't really that smooth in the beginning. And towards the end, they sat at 10th, with just 2 events to go. But one gold medal could change everything. And well, they would do better than that. They would end up getting 2. It was announced that the Marble League for this year would be a brand new winter edition, the first and only so far. This gave the Wisps an advantage. They trained in the cold and would run in the cold. Now the Wisps had just missed auto qualification by 1 spot, but this didn't distract them. They were willing to work hard to prove that the phrase "will of a wisp" isn't just a saying for the team. They were picked to be in Group B, and their qualifiers were pretty successful and consistent, very much unlike their 2017 qualifiers. The first event of the qualifiers was curling. Without a doubt, the longest event in history. It would take lots of endurance for a long period of time, and the Wisps were ready for that. It didn't look like it early on, however, as their first 2 marbles didn't play out too well. They had 0 points, and needed the others to step up. Both would end up doing so, as they both got on the board, and the Glaciers, meanwhile, put themselves off the board, giving the Wisps an easy win.
That's going to be the case, and it's another blank, this time Midnight Wisps over the Gliding Glaciers, 4-0, and they have reason to believe in their team after a good showing like that.
In the next round, they would have a very low-scoring battle with the Jumpers. Only 1 marble managed to score points. Luckily, it was a Wisp.
Waspy, aim it to the near side, comes off the back. Get a little bit of curl back to the middle. Yes, he will. Just on the edge of the red.
And they advanced once again in the final. They faced the Oceanics, and it was pretty close. The Oceanics were leading by 1, and the Wisps needed to get closest to the center to win, but Waspy wasn't able to get there. They did tie it up, but the Oceanics won by distance.
Well, actually, they will be able to do that. We're going to end up being tied here, and the Oceanics are going to come away with the victory. The Oceanics are closer to center.
They did get silver, though, and the rest of the qualifiers was filled with consistency, but maybe not in the right places. They only got 4th or 5th out of 8 places for the next 3 events. They hung around at 2nd for the first 3 events, but their spot was in jeopardy after the 3rd event, especially when they only got 5th in the final event of the qualifiers. That allowed another team to pass them, and the Cobalts came just 1 point away from besting the Wisps, qualifying by 1 point, the slimmest margin in sports. And that moment will definitely not for sure not foreshadow what's not going to happen. Maybe. But for now, all we know is that they qualified by 1. They made it to the real thing. Now the first event wasn't that bad. They did get past the first round, but they were way more unsuccessful in the second. The Pinkies just edged them, and they finished in 8th. Now of course, this is the beginning of the competition. Anything can change with just 1 medal. Waspy himself was actually pretty confident, saying, quote, "We'll get it together. You'll see." The next event begged to differ, however. It was the ski jump. Now, actually, they were expected to do well in the ski jump, just based on the fact that they were able to get a silver in the previous year's long jump. Now, to be fair, it was a different marble that jumped, and clearly, that difference was a pretty big one. Wispy was the one to jump, and he was only able to muster up a 14th spot. This was very disappointing for Wispy, and it would end up being their worst individual performance of the year. Not to mention, it dropped them to 11th. With only 2 events down, they had only scored 10 points and were down by 30. But luckily, it only went uphill from here, and that 30 points would start to shrink. The next event was the halfpipe. Now in the qualifiers, the halfpipe almost cost them qualification, so there was definitely an improvement to be made. Their competition would be rather tough. They faced none other than the Savage Speeders, a former champion. Wispy talked about the pressure to be in their presence, saying, quote, "It's very nerve-wracking. They've been around since the beginning and before that, but we'll keep our cool like we always do. We promise this won't get to us." And they indeed kept their promise and would win the heat against the Speeders.
Midnight Wisps, look at those 3 that they've got back there, and it's a pretty good gap. Watching the inset, so all of the Savage Speeders are done, then come the Midnight Wisps, and that should be an easy victory, 28-4-7.
Halfway through the competition, their time held them at second. One more heat was to go, and they were actually paired with a team that had made the best time so far. But they weren't able to win their heat. And even worse, their time was significantly worse than their last.
In the first round, good enough right now for 3rd place. Can they better it? And look at that big grouping in front as they cross the line. This will be close, 26-3-5 to 26-1-6. It did end up being those last 2 marbles.
Luckily, their first heat time was so good that they were still able to podium. But unluckily, they were beat by the Speeders. A bronze is still better than what they had before, and they were finally able to gain spots, as they now sat at 6th. The next event was the bobsled. It was another that was solely on time rather than placement, and now they themselves would be the only ones racing. They had a solid performance, but a lost marble at the end possibly cost them a gold medal. The Wisps were slotted into 3rd, and that's where they stayed. This was the first time they had gotten consecutive podiums, and their new spot was now in 5th, just 22 points out of 1st place. But their next 2 events didn't go too well. Now, we all know that this story is about a comeback, and every comeback starts with doubt. And these 2 events were that doubt for the Midnight Wisps. First up is speed skating. Their first 2 individual events did not go well, just 10 points in 2 events. And that would continue here. They were placed with the eventual gold medal winners in the Hazers, and they were just not able to keep up with the rookies.
2 turns to go. Now over at 10th, nearly 2 tenths. Will Misty from the Hazers reset the Marble Olympics record? Yes, he will.
A 10th place finish dropped them just 1 spot to 6th, but they were still within a gold medal from 1st overall. They just needed to do better in the next event. Luckily for them, it was a team event, and their 2 bronze medals were from team events. Wispy explained their lucky position in the standings, saying, quote, "We've had some bottom half finishes, but we're still in 6th. The whole field is very close right now, and we have to take advantage of that. Let's continue that great team performance we've had so far this Marble League." Sadly though, that would not happen. This performance would be one of the worst in their career. The only time they were in frame for the race was during the turns. And the Limers, yes, the Limers, dominated the Wisps.
A huge lead. They are still now over 1 1/4 seconds up, and they are still close together. They might be ones to watch later on in this knockout tournament. Cross the line for an easy victory, 33.
The Wisps themselves would finish in 16th, over a second behind the Balls of Chaos in 15th. Clearly the Wisps were not happy with this performance, and their performance also dropped them down to 11th. But we need to look at the standings to understand how close all these teams really are. After 6 events, the top 9 were all just a gold medal away from 1st in 2018. Compare that to 2017, where only one other team was within a gold medal from 1st overall. Nobody was dominating. Everyone battled with inconsistency. It would only be a matter of time before a team took advantage of the field. And that team would be the Midnight Wisps.